think we're getting close.
Hey, Kevin,
Yeah.
guess what my degree's in?
What?
English.
Hey, there we go, Jordan. Another Englishman right there in Cronin.
My dad said, go to university to learn how to think, not to learn how to do.
I agree. That's what I thought, Jordan. So we don't know if it's working
so
yet.
I totally support everything that you said.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I say one other thing as long as I got the microphone?
Heck yeah, go nuts.
Okay, so I have 47 nieces and nephews, and I have 6 children. So I'm an observer of the 30s and below. And so we've gotten a lot of advice from the young people up to the old fat guys like me. So I'm going to give you an old fat guy going your way. What is it about your generation that you don't network? It's amazing. It is amazing to me. Exactly, I agree. Soren Schroeder is here. I met Soren Schroeder in 1989. And I just sat at lunch and hit him up for a couple $1 million because there's this great aquafeed business I want him to invest in. I met him in 1989. The team that I'm going to build soy processing plants with is all the guys I grew up with in Continental Grain Company, in the soy processing group. And for my older kids, it drives me bananas when I'll say, oh yeah, how's Brian doing? Oh, Dad, yeah, he's doing great. He's got this business over there. How often do you talk to him? I really haven't talked to him. I'm like, why not? So if I have any message from the old fat sector to the young people, is these are, when I was growing up, these were called networking events. Network. So if you met somebody really interesting and somebody fascinating, connect with them and then maintain the connection. Put a note on your calendar 2 months from now to pick up the phone and call that person. Don't text them. Pick up the phone and keep the network going. Andy and Kevin, you met when?
A long time ago, before Jordan was born.
93?
Yeah.
Business connections are all about the network. And if I have one thing, and again, I'm observer of my nieces and nephews and my own children, is the 30s and below, you don't network. You forget about people. You meet them once and you're done. And I don't understand it. I agree with what Andy said here. I think it's this.
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy, right, Walter, to do it that way. I tell Jordan, I tell my wife, play into your strengths. I tell Jordan, you think you're better if you're going against your competition, sitting at home and nobody's seeing you smile, nobody's shaking your hand, nobody getting a personal. I said, you got to get off your ass, get out there, and go to these events, go to these conferences, meet people. It's where you meet these people that things happen. Every great producer that I've met in this room all said those similar things to me. I do this for my kids to go out and meet more people so I can build a better network to leave it to my kids. And then my kids are like, nah, Dad, I just text the guy. I'm with you, Walt. I'm like, no, you're going to get on the plane. You're going to get in that truck. You're going to drive over to that conference. I know it's harder, but it's right. You're right. Human interaction is important.
I'll give you one other quick theory that I add to this, and it's all about the high school dance. It's all about the high school dance.
Man. Yeah, let's hear it.
I went to all Catholic schools when I was growing up, and dances were very important. You had to ask a girl to the dance. And that, as a teenager, scared the crap out of you. Because she might say what?
No.
Not interested. Right? And so that process with, again, observing my kids in these schools where now they let a group of girls go to the dance together or a group of boys, that's absurd. That's like, the difficulties of life, it's like easing you from that process right from the beginning. It's very, very hard to walk up to somebody and ask them for $5 million. That's hard to do. And you should start learning that at a very young age. The answer might be no, and you're going to have to stand there, smile, and say, thank you very much. And that's tough. So this, plus the high school dance, is worked against you in that regard. And if you can, force yourself into this difficult thing of networking, and then maintain the network, because it leads to lots of success. Okay, that's it.
I agree. That Jay Felton, Jay came up to me afterward, introduced me to someone, and Jay knows my kryptonite is speaking. I hate speaking, and I don't even go there with me and say, oh, you're, no. I have read books. I have talked to psychologists. I was never scared of anything in life except speaking when I was a kid. So, go rolling, captain of the football team, hey, say something. I'm not saying, yeah, right, let's go get him. Let's kick some ass. I mean, I did not like to speak. I've never liked to speak, and it's just, I go back to asking girls out, and I'm like, my gosh, I was a nervous wreck about the whole thing. I'd pray for Sadie Hawkins' dance to come around, 'cause it's like, this is going to be awesome.
They don't
so I'm
even,
going to have a
these
lot
young
of
people
chicks
don't
asking me to this dance, and see, this is going to be a whole different
These young
game.
people don't even know what that is.
Exactly, and I'm like, no. So I have to psych myself out to come up here. I'm usually with the rag like Jerry Tarkanian. My nerves are going crazy. Can't sleep the night before. Like, I hate it. But make myself do it, force myself to do it. Come on up, boss. And, so I think you're right. I mean, but as parents, we try to make it easier for our kids and look for things. Oh, we don't want him to get his feelings hurt. We don't want him to get their, and I got it. But, man, I tell you what, if my parents wouldn't have been tough and the girls tough and turned me down a lot, I wouldn't have found probably the wife I found, and I probably wouldn't have the tenacity to be up here and grit through this thing. And, yeah, a lot of that goes with it. So, yeah. Shaan, appreciate it. We sprung it on him. We made an executive decision. Let's just do one panel. I apologize to the people that didn't get to be on this one panel. We're going to do one panel in the show. All the investment people, Carter's on the phone. I think the crypto is John zooming in at 3. Be perfect. For those who don't know, Shaan Puri, he walked in. We hit him at the last second and said, Shaan, come on down, jump on stage with us. I love it. He's from out on the West Coast. A friend I met, Sam Parr. If any of you have ever read The Hustle, not Hustler, The Hustle magazine, wasn't a magazine, excuse me, you got me now, I'm going over the other direction. The Hustle is a newsletter that Sam had started, and it kind of blew up, and he sold it and exited for a big chunk. And I was at a conference, not speaking, I met Sam, and we hit it off because Sam used to work for American Pickers. He was one of their first couple of hires. So Mike Wolf, we were starting to talk about Mike Wolf and some of the other guys, and we were in the antique space, in the antique business. And so Sam and I kind of hit it off, and he exited with the big exit last year, hooked up with Shaan. Now I think they've got the 4th most popular podcast in the United States on the business side. It's called My First Millions. And Shaan's exited a lot of companies, started companies from scratch, brought them up, exited. And they talk to people who have built businesses. And I'm super happy that you could come join us and give us a different perspective. And I think it's going to be interesting to hear about the crypto space, the NFTs, some other things he's seeing in different spaces. Jay Felton, Latham & Gage. Jay's our attorney, one of our attorneys. Latham & Gage works with a lot of the biggest people in the food and ag space. Jay and I became good friends the last several years, and him and I's interests are similar. We started rapping about the sports card business that, in the trading card business that we were both in this last year, and the crazy prices and what we were selling them for and things like that. So we'll get into some interesting things there. I think all of you know Jordan. We've been doing a lot of different investing. He invests different than I, and it'll be interesting for you guys to hear some of the younger stuff. And then we got the entire portion, a small portion of the first panel back with Gregg Doud, Andy Daniels, Mike Moch, and Walter Cronin, and Carter Williams is on the Zoom. And I think it'll be great. We'll wrap it up. Hopefully we can get to a lot of really good things. I kind of hit on where my investments were and things of that nature. Let's jump back to Dowd, let's kick it off with you at the end. Let's talk Moch, what do you want to hear? You want to hear about the Farm Bill?
Well, I'm a little nervous about what farm legislation is going to look like going forward. I think Gregg is a very valuable resource. I'm not quite sure why Andy and I have to be up here when we have someone like Gregg that could talk for the next half hour. But what do we expect moving forward, and perhaps from either party? I think, Gregg, just from discussions you and I have had, is that there's a sheer lack of leadership. And the other thing, Gregg, and I know this could be a long story that you could make short, I'd like you to, if you could give the 2-minute version of the war games that you folks are playing. I think this crowd would love to hear that.
Well, let's talk about Aimpoint Research right quick.
Sure.
So this is an interesting company that I joined about 11 months ago. These folks are military guys. So 3 of the 4 of these guys that run Aimpoint Research were classmates at West Point. And 2 of them were the 2 most recent colonels in charge of wargaming at the Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. What was their job? To stress test a battle plan, real life U.S. military. They have taken, now that they're in the private sector, they have taken that business model to corporate America. And we've done at least a dozen of these now, and this year we're going to do about 1 a month. What we're really doing is stress testing a battle or a strategic plan. We've done these for the farm credit system, the dairy industry, the meat industry, soybean folks. We have quite a few of them planned this year. So at Aimpoint, we do really good market research. We have a little bit of McKinsey-style consulting strategic planning. We do the wargaming, and then the group I lead is on the intel side. When we start a 2-day war game, we'll start that with a 3-hour intel briefing about your industry, and this is what's going on in your industry. And there's a team of us. One guy in the company, it's really interesting, in addition to the military guys, one of these guys just swam in the Olympic trials. One of my colleagues was All-American defensive back at Ohio State, played 6 years in the NFL for the Raiders and the Dolphins, Jim DeChiqua. Yeah. Unbelievably great and really cool people.
I'm really excited because I've watched Jimmy play football. I've never met him, so I'm going to need an autograph.
Okay. He's a great guy. But to answer your question, in Washington, it's just broken right now. And frankly, for other companies that I work with, trade association I used to run on the futures market side, there's going to be almost nothing happening in Washington this year, in my opinion. If they could get the appropriations bills done on time, I would be happy with that, and that would be good. What I was going to digress and talk about for a little bit, Kevin, was I give a lot of speeches, almost 1 a week, all over, and talking about global agricultural trade. And for all of you today, what I want you to know is the optimism I have on the meat side of the equation. What Aimpoint Research does is we're looking at 5, 10, 20 years out. What does this thing look like? And on the meat side of the equation, folks, the answer is supply and demand do not balance. You have to look at what China is doing on meat. People don't understand, in the last couple of years, China has bought $10 billion worth of beef. The story I can tell about how we opened the Chinese market to U.S. beef for the first time is extraordinary. I thought we would sell China $1 billion worth of beef at some point in the future. The November trade data just came out today, folks. For 2021, between China and Hong Kong, the United States will sell them well over $2 billion in beef. I can go into all of that, but you look around the world on the meat side of the equation, on hogs, the Chinese are losing money, the Europeans are losing money, we're struggling with disease. It's going to be hard to expand the hog herd. You've had a massive drought in Brazil and Argentina, massive drought in the western U.S. You've got an opportunity to expand a little bit in Australia, but there's no downside on the cattle side of the equation. There's no real increase in production on the pork side of the equation. And then the other side is dairy, and the amount of global trade in dairy is expanding. But in all of these commodities, on the meat side of the equation, anywhere you look in the world, you ask yourself one question. As a guy that's doing this, has done this for 30 years, my question is very simple. We need more protein in the world. Where are we going to grow it? You're not growing it in Europe, folks. They're talking about cutting fertilizer use 50%, pesticide use 25%, and cutting land production by 10%. Within 5 to 10 years, folks, Europe is going to be one of the major grain importing entities in the world. They're going to screw developing countries. They're not expanding anywhere on the European side of the equation. Yeah, you can expand in Russia and the Black Sea a little bit. You can't expand in Asia, and on the livestock side, you can't expand in South America. Where are you going to expand, Andy? North America. Why aren't we planning on it?
Who we talking to? I wasn't sure you.
It was
I
a
thought
rhetorical.
maybe you said Andy there.
It was a rhetorical question, Kevin.
Yeah, why aren't we planting more?
Why aren't we planning on and getting geared up for the expansion of the production we're going to need on the meat and animal protein side, because the world is going to need it? Yeah, I've heard that argument for about 25 years. Really nothing has changed in the meat processing industry in all those years. What you have to understand on the processing side right now is you have one issue: labor, 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 and labor. And it is a huge challenge for us going forward. We can have that conversation on the side.
There's one other as well, and it's called NIMBY.
Yes, that's true. Absolutely.
Not in my backyard.
Right in my area of southern Maryland, they would love to build a packing plant. No one will let them do it.
No
Not
way.
even a small one.
No way.
Hey, Carter, what do you see happening with protein?
I just want to just follow that on what he said just very quickly. Kevin, please. So the number one most consumed meat in the world is fish. Okay? The poultry, so if you're in a world that's constrained on vegetable proteins and feed grains, as was said, then you need super efficiency in the consumption of the proteins and the meats, and the feed grains that remain. The two most efficient converters of vegetable protein and feed grains into meat are fish at 1.1 to 1 ratio, and then poultry at 1.3, 1.4 to 1. Swine are at 3.5 to 1, and then beef cattle, and when I was in Green Plains in our feed yards, we were 5.6, 5.7 to 1. The future is in fish and poultry to meet this global demand for more proteins. Meat proteins. That's the future. Those are the companies that are going to excel.
Mike, I think the question, well, I struggle with forecasting out 20 years and using linear modeling. Forecast 20 years out, but use what I knew happened back there and saying it's not going to work 20 years out. What about alternative proteins? What about different proteins, Carter? I mean, it's going to evolve and be way different. So tell us, Carter.
Yeah, I think that the cost equation, if you look at like silicone and what happened in silicone and chip manufacturing, or you look what's happened in drugs and biologics and changes, I think everything on the synthetic biology space is going to be really interesting. I wouldn't make a forecast one way or the other. The alternative proteins fit in an interesting way in Asia because there isn't necessarily a real taste for Asia around protein. So it's easy for us to do something like a plant-based protein that goes into dumplings, and no one's going to know the difference. So I think that there are new people entering the market, Asia. You know, Pakistan was the quickest to adopt 3G cellular, fast in the United States because they didn't have it before, back in the late 90s. And so I think it's a, all the above strategy. I think the U.S. is far ahead of everybody else technology-wise, far ahead of everybody else work ethic, far ahead of everybody else in potential productivity. And if the American technology companies and the American farmer keep their eyes open, there are going to be so many opportunities available to them that it's going to pay off. But Craig's comment on Europe cannot get themselves out of the GMO mess You go to Africa, you listen to Kip Tom, you know, he has to sit there where he's just trying to get people into the last 100 years of production. And people in France are telling people in Africa that they can't use any advanced things unless they're anti-GMO. So Africa's got some challenge, and China just can't be straight about anything that they do in terms of production. You know, it just comes back to, I think, the American farmer and the American innovation are going to lead the way. And yes, synthetic biology is going to have a lot to do with it because the cost equation is getting so much better. Yeah, the GMO, gene sequencing. So we sequenced the gene for the first time in St. Louis in 2000 for $2.5 billion, and you can now sequence your genes for $300. Completely different paradigm.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's probably, Greg, a combination, like we're saying. I don't know how sticky the synthetic will be. You know, it's hard to forecast when you don't know what it is.
We've looked into this. On the dairy side, if you look at almond milk, oat milk, all that, Kevin, it's about 18% is what they've done there. I think, you know, 13, 15, 18% on the meat side is probably a good number to throw out there for the sake of argument over an extended period.
But we're in agreement, you guys. I mean, I learned from them, so that I would say you guys are in agreement that we're going to have a massive push and a build out into the higher protein soy space with more crush facilities, more acres needed, right on down the line. So you're seeing the same data then you're in agreement. So yeah, I think that's very interesting from yesterday's perspective. So Moch, I thought you brought up the great point on the ethanol and the aviation fuel side, and you're seeing similar data as well, Mike, right, with the corn.
Yeah, I think that there's lots of things to be positive about, but you know, I was trained as a risk manager, so I'm always looking for what can go wrong. And I think the only word of caution I would say is there's so many exciting things that we've talked about here moving forward, and we don't want to lose sight of those opportunities, but we still have to take care of a lot of the day-to-day stuff and don't lose sight of that. But I'm as optimistic as I've been in a long time, but I'm still looking over my back for, you know, what could happen next. I was talking to a couple of younger guys earlier. Some of the guys at Daniels Trading are fun guys to be with. John and I are old buddies, and I can remember 1987, that October, I went to the board for a luncheon meeting with some folks, and we decided to go over to the Merck to see some of the hog guys, and it was Friday the 16th of October. And they said, hey, there's some crazy stuff going on in the S&P pit. Let's go see how it closes. And I'd never seen people puke all over their shoes like I saw that day. I mean, the market was down about 5% in about 10 minutes' time. And then, of course, Monday, 25, 26, 27% down one day. And those kinds of things do happen occasionally, and you have to be prepared for that emotionally. That's the only, I'm not suggesting that there's anything big like that going to happen. I just want to make sure that as people are looking forward, as we go from this transition of, you know, the old fat guys, working with the younger kids, male and female on the farm, we make this transition, that you do it 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I just think my responsibility in this panel is just to provide just a hint of caution in terms of how you move forward. Kevin and I are great friends, and we always will be. He's a little more aggressive than I am. I want to be a little more careful. I think our responsibility is to say, look, we've got a lot of wonderful things happening, but let's make sure we mind our P's and Q's over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years so we can all get there together. Is that fair, Kevin?
I'm pretty aggressive. I'm pretty concerned. I'm 60% sold in wheat for this 2022, about 30% for 2023. I'm with Mike, and Andy will tell you the same thing. I market like I would want to trade, so I never, when I move the checker, it's like playing good at pool, right? It's all about the leave. You know, my dad taught me, he hustled a lot of pools, so I was in a lot of pool halls sometimes, and it's like, it's all about the leave. Well, where are your next 3 moves going to be? It's not about this move. Here's the question. We're trading corn at $5.50, new crop, right, Mike? All right. Hey, we break to $4.90. Where are you at psychologically? What's your move? I don't want to be there. I don't want to psychologically be staring at $4.90 and beating myself up at night at my house, being pissed and watching this market trade lower, and I get stuck like a deer in the headlights. Can't know what to do now because I'm so mad I didn't sell 550. I watched it break through 525. Now all of a sudden we're trading 490. It's like, well, what do I do, right, Mike? That's the one I want to stay out of. I'm trying to, like a great quarterback, right? When you're teaching quarterbacks, it's always, where do you throw the ball? You got to throw the ball into a position that only your guy can catch. It's like, don't make the mistake that leaves you open, right, Mike? I mean,
Kevin, I think that's one of the things, and it's so simple, but it's so important, is I can't wait to establish a new crop corn and bean value through February, just so I know what kind of insurance value I've got. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a government put and keeping the upside open to some degree. So, having 35% of your new corn and new beans done, 60% of your wheat, that's not to me, that's a balanced position. How many times did Mitch say balance today? Balance, balance, balance. I think that's the game you got to play in the short run as these other things evolve. The other thing I want to address, and sorry for chatting so much, Kevin, but yesterday you challenged me a little bit when this one grower customer I knew that farms very marginal ground in Northwest Ohio, has a great year, builds a big 50,000 bushel can for corn, and buys 2 farms that I felt he shouldn't have bought. So what would, if he'd have asked me, he didn't, it's his business, I'd have said, look, you're already farming 6,000 acres. You need to do a better job of what you're already doing. Take that money and tile those farms that aren't tiled. And don't build the 50,000 bushel can. Go with more flexible, smaller bins in preparation for what's coming down the road with more importance, more reliance on specialty beans and IP products. I think those are the things that, I'm not saying don't buy ground, and everyone needs to buy that farm that's right next door, even if it's at a premium price. But location, location, location is critical, Kevin, and just to chase it, I think would be a mistake in this environment. So, again, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer. I just think it's a balance thing.
no, I agree. And I think it's all about where you leave yourself psychologically. And I'll just toss one to Andy here. Here's one. Winter Olympics end. China makes a move on Taiwan, Daddy. How far down can corn prices go? If.
I would think not much, because China goes in there, their needs aren't going to change overnight, and it would probably be in unison with Russia doing something in Ukraine, and you take Ukraine supplies off the market, and now all of a sudden the world's got a lot of shortages in protein, wheat, and everything else under the sun. So I don't think that would have a huge impact on corn prices, myself. Where I do think we could see a bigger impact, and
So you don't think China would at all, if the U.S. comes in hardcore, you think China will keep buying U.S. corn? If Biden puts the clamp down on them.
you're funny.
Tries to.
You're
yeah,
funny.
I'm a funny guy. Yeah.
You said
Go
that
Brandon.
A lot of predicates in that comment.
No. That won't happen, and that's the only reason they do it. And, actually,
Well, that's what I'm saying. If that happens,
if it happens, I would, again, think that I wouldn't think that would be the first reaction of the market would be for corn to break, because I don't, hell, they've only taken 11 million of the 21 million they took last year, and,
we're talking the funds and the algos
well, the funds in the algos,
and
right.
the headline traders. You don't think that market breaks?
Well, here's where I think that
I'll take the opposite.
Well, here's where I think the vulnerability of the funds in algos. I mean, Powell has basically gone from dove to hawk, and he's all but said he's gonna start cutting in March, all right? How much of the fund length in corn at 350,000 contracts is formidable. And I think a lot of that is inflationary type hedging that they're doing. And, they're hedging against, nitrogen costs and everything else under the sun. But, their logic is in corn, because in beans they're along, 100,000? And in wheat, pretty much flat, maybe along a little bit of Kansas City. The point is, all their length is in corn, and that length in corn would be vulnerable, yes. And I guess it would be vulnerable under the scenario that you described, but I think it's vulnerable irrespective, because I think when you start raising interest rates, they're going to probably head for the hills to some degree.
You think, you're saying if we raise interest rates, you think the funds are gonna get more long corn?
No, the
Yeah.
opposite.
Because
They're
it's,
gonna break out of corn.
Yes,
deflationary.
correct.
I mean, Kevin, that happened today. I mean, that was.
No,
last
that's what
Wednesday.
I'm trying to say. I'm
What-
saying, how
right.
far are we gonna break prices? I think if you get a double-edged sword, the funds wanting to break because they think the global economy is gonna slow because you're going into a rising rate environment. Same time, China goes into Taiwan, and all of a sudden, U.S. is threatening sanctions. Well, China says, well, here's the play, Mike. When we slapped the tire tariff on, and then they let a bunch of cotton, said, what year was that? When they let all that cotton sit off the shore and just said, shit, here, we ain't unloading any of your cotton.
Yep.
When we slapped the tire tariff, I just say when we start that bantering of tariffing back and forth, I think the funds hit the ejector seat. They blow out of their lungs at the same time they're blowing out for other reasons, and that's scary to me.
Kevin, that's the
And
risk.
that was my point. I think you're gonna see them blow out.
I know. What do you think? You said prices wouldn't drop that far.
Well,
Do you think we could go to 480?
you could.
That's what I'm
I
saying.
think
That's what
if
I'm
you go to
just telling
480,
you.
you're gonna break $2 in beans before you break $1 in corn. Or you're gonna
I'm
break-
with you. I'm with you.
So my only point yesterday was I'm significantly bearish on beans.
Right.
I'm not as bearish on corn, and potentially, if none of these things happen, corn has more upside than downside.
Yeah.
But you have downside in corn because of the extreme fund length. You have downside in, and hell, at these prices at $5.50, is there anyone in this room that can't make money farming? You ought to have something sold irrespective. Yes, you got the government in February to likely bail things out, but I do think it's prudent to have some sales in the books here.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to go along with Mike's point. I certainly believe we could see 480 corn in a blink of an eye if something squirrels the funds up and they decide they want to get flat this market. And all I'm saying is you won't have a chance to psychologically get your bearings about you because we'll be breaking and you'll be pissed and kicking yourself because you didn't sell it 25 cents higher, and then you'll get deer in the headlights all of a sudden, and the thing will drop another 30, 40 cents, and now you're really not selling it because you're really pissed. And now you're in a problem. Now you find yourself in a hole that you don't like. Or we get closer to break-even prices, Mike, you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, don't let yourself get in that psychological, and that's what Mike's telling everyone right here.
That's exactly my point. And again, I think the real risk is I got seed in the bag that I haven't priced any of it, and I just bought fertilizer at the highs, and I'm sitting here double long in that sense. If you bought high-priced inputs, you've got to get some of that stuff covered. Now, I had a couple of folks ask me, why were beans down so hard overnight? Well, I think a lot of this was the Fed, the minutes yesterday. They're clearly, we're going to raise rates, and I think that's got implications that not all of us on this call really understand just yet. Rates will probably be cheaper than normal for an extended period of time, but how cheap and the old school, don't fight the Fed. Those things are important. Gold down $40 this morning, silver down $1.20. Yet crude oil is, chasing back up towards $80 a barrel. It's all over the place, and if anybody can sort through all this, maybe Carter can. But I think it's and that's a compliment, Carter. I think the real challenge is folks that I talk to, we're not smart enough to figure that out. So let's do some of the basic stuff right. And I would just tell you, February 28th can't get here fast enough to improve my overnight sleeping habits.
What do you guys think on inflation? You think we've peaked? Anyone want a shot on it?
No.
You don't think we've peaked?
No, I think that wage inflation is going to have a longer tail. I think crude oil at $80 is going to be with us. I think all the increased regulations, and that's all leading to greater and greater inflation. And the employment situation. Hell, we probably lost 3.5 million people who just took early retirement that weren't on the grid to retire, but given COVID and given the appreciation and their net worth from their stock market valuations and their home values, you got a lot of people that took early retirement and they're not coming back. So wage inflation is something that's hard to get around, and it doesn't really affect. You're not going to raise rates fast enough. It's going to take 3 or 4, a full percent at least, to get us to a point where we start getting it under control.
In all reality, we haven't had near enough wage inflation in the last 20 years, so
Agreed.
we're catching up.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to talk my position in my book. He's going to talk his position. You long some golds? Hey, Daddy, you still long some gold?
I'm long gold and I'm long silver. Hell, here's a favorite trade. Right now, the entire gold above ground is worth about $10 trillion, and the U.S. stock market's worth about $60 trillion.
Yeah.
Back in 1980, the gold was worth, the amount of gold above ground was 3 times the value of the total stock market. So I understand what you're saying, but you look at some of these miners right now, the top 3 miners are probably only $100 billion valuation, where the top 3 tech companies are over $8 trillion of valuation. My point is that I think that there's some good value in being long some of these mining stocks, and they're cheap as hell on a relative basis.
Is that the story the world's going to follow, though? Are these young kids going to put their money in gold or Bitcoin? Are we old bears?
Not all of them are. That's an old bear story. You're right.
I don't know. That's my question.
Hey, Kevin, I don't have an answer to this, but new tech is improving productivity so much that I honestly believe the reason we have not seen a lot of inflation is because people are able to move over to new tech. You know, people say about Tesla, what's going to happen with Tesla? You know, he's getting rid of everybody's cars. He's trying to move to autonomy. You know, Ford is thinking about selling more cars. Average cars used 5% of the time. Tesla's going to drive their utilization to 50, 60, 70% of the time. Totally changes the productivity factor in automotive. And we've had all of these productivity factors entering the market on the new economy, and the secular economy, some of it doesn't pick it up. And there could be inflation in the secular economy if people still need it, that thing. But I think the young people and new people will just switch to the new tech, which has a better total factor productivity. And where that balances out, I don't know.
Yeah, let's go to a young one, John, who's on Zoom here. John Peurifoy, co-founder, CEO at Floating Point Group. John, Carter, you guys might hit it off. John, MIT grad.
Hi, John.
MIT grad, loaded up in cryptos. John, take it away. Give us some new world economy.
Hey guys, it's really, really wonderful meeting you all and being with you today. I really, really appreciate the experience, both from Kevin and Jordan. Thank you guys. And it's good to meet all you guys. I grew up in Missouri, so I have a little bit. I live here in New York, working in the crypto space, doing a lot of stuff around there. I think if I maybe had to opine on this, I'd probably say 2 things. One is, I agree with the point of productivity, right? I agree with the shifting labor markets concept, right? The reality is that people are generating wealth in ways today that are far more efficient and far more evangelizing than you've seen before, right? Like, people are kind of using different methods and podiums to kind of promote and be able to actually kind of gain a lot of like wealth and kind of fortuity. And so anyways, the reason why I say all that is, so I think that's where crypto and a lot of things actually come into play, right? Because crypto is all about autonomous, right? Crypto is literally about how do we make money, literally currencies and contracts and programs, so we can kind of go between these things, right? The good stat being that Fidelity employs about 15,000 people, and all of crypto employs about that same number of people, right? So when you start to consider the scale of kind of what this industry can do and what kind of that ecosystem can do, yeah, entirely agreed. Autonomous is kind of the name of the future, and if you want to talk about that in a currency land, you're talking about cryptocurrencies. So I think I'd probably say that. I think to the point of the Fed policies and around inflation and everything, 100%. Inflation definitely hasn't peaked yet. It's also note that CPIs and other indices are obviously bad indicators for these things because of just the nature of cost has shifted so drastically, right? Like, internally, we hire people around the globe, and, we hire people in India, we hire people here in the US, and we have to apply a massive discount factor to geographical disparities. What I mean is, like, in New Delhi right now, it costs, roughly speaking, it's about a 70% discount here in the US, right? So if you're in New York, $100 a day. If you're in Delhi, you'd only need $30 a day in order to like live, pay rent, and do things like that. Yet the wage difference is not actually that much. The wage difference is about a fourth of that. And so the reason I say this is when you start thinking about globalization, what does that mean for other economies? What does it mean for that world? It really starts to present kind of a different perspective on it. So anyways, those are maybe kind of my high level thoughts. Would love to dive deeper with different people, but A, to the comment on inflation, unquestionably haven't hit it yet. B, to the point on autonomous, 100%. When you're looking at new technologies, particularly like crypto, you're thinking about how are we automating more and more things, particularly in the financial world where capital markets infrastructure just hasn't developed in the past 10, 20 years. And then I think on the last component of that, it's as globalization really kicks, particularly in high-tech jobs, you're going to see a lot of problems where, a lot of the traditional indicators just don't work. So those are some of my thoughts, but I don't know if anyone maybe wants to pop off that.
No, I appreciate it, John. John, tell us again, MIT, what's your background?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Missouri. So I grew up in Springfield, Missouri, if anyone's from that. There's 42 Springfields in the United States, actually. I went to school at MIT. I studied electrical engineering, computer science, and physics. I did a lot of work around data modeling. I did a little bit of work in quantum mechanics. I did a lot of work in atomic and molecular optical physics. I then used some of that in the financial domain. So I did algorithmic trading at a couple of hedge funds and kind of started kind of a friends and family kind of fund as well. Did that for a couple of years. And then I started my PhD at MIT in optical computing. And I had a friend of mine that was really deep in crypto, and he was like, come and do this. So we started a crypto company back in 2017. We now are, kind of growing pretty quickly. We're up to, 30, 40 people. And we service a lot of large hedge funds, institutions, asset managers, groups like that.
Did you guys get all that? Did you guys get all that? Daddy looks like just like, the kids we used to hire, no, not. I mean, he's just chilling in his crib like, hey, I'm just doing a little astrophysics, advising some funds, man. What do you guys need to know? Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, whatever.
Life is good.
Sure, man. Point and fire. Shaan, followed up. Tell us about it.
Yeah, the way I think about things, and by the way, I'm Shaan, or the brown guy in the room. I've never been to a farm.
No, straight in from San Fran. He comes in last night, goes to a dinner meeting with Andy and I. I lose my mind for about 5 minutes, getting a little heated discussion.
More like a half hour.
I got on
Maybe an hour.
I got on a
not
half.
5 minutes.
I got on a half hour. I probably still need to apologize to some people, my friends particularly. And Michelle was like, "Are you playing nice?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not probably playing that." But anyway, Shaan, first time he comes in from San Fran, I'm meeting through their guys. He leaves the room and he's like, I run into him in the hall. He's like, "What in the hell just happened? What is going on? Are you guys friends?" And we're like, "Yeah." And Walter's like, "Shit, I felt like I was at home. I come from a big Catholic family. This was like a good dinner tonight. We just argued and fought."
I'm one of 10 kids. It was like, it was like Sunday night dinner.
So Sean's like, "I've never been around this farming stuff. It's just 3 guys come up to him. He's got a Barcelona soccer shirt on. 3 guys come up to him like, "What the hell's that you're wearing? What the shit is that?" And he's like, "What's going on?" I said, "Yeah, they probably don't like all that foreign jazz on your shirt right there." So I'm like, hey, just thanks for coming. No, anyway, Shaan, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm a startup investor, and I've seen a lot of pitches, but I've never seen a business pitch that I didn't know it's a 50-50 shot. It's either going to end in someone giving someone money or punching someone in the face. And I just couldn't tell which way it was going to go. So I was thrilled. On what John was talking about, the way I look at things, because, I talked to a lot of people here, and I was mostly asking questions because I don't know anything about anything. But when they were talking to me about, what do you do? I said, well, I invest in tech companies, and I got this feeling that it's sort of like, oh yeah, there's all that new stuff that's out there, and who knows? The world's going to get crazy in the future. There's all this new stuff, and it's like, it's hard to wrap your head around what the stuff is, what's the use of it, what is cryptocurrency, what is all this stuff. So the way I think about it is, every business owner that I know has, sort of 2 big expenses in their life, and one is labor and the other is taxes. And what most startups that I look at, most technology that I invest in does is it attacks one of those 2 problems. The labor one is easy to understand. Automation helps reduce labor. So, I'll invest in a robot that makes pizza perfectly 24/7, never calls in sick, won't steal from the register. And, if you can make a pizza robot that does that, you have zero, as an entrepreneur, that company's going to go big because every pizza shop in the country would rather have a reliable robot than a person. And that's sort of just not a moral argument, that's an economic argument. They will do it. And so that's what you see happening in pretty much every field, right? I go to the airport to check in, there's kiosks. That used to be a lady, clickety-clacking on a keyboard trying to check you in. And so every point that can get automated will get automated, and more things get automated. So that's the first area that I'm investing in. And when I look around and I see a business, I'm just looking at all the things that are going to be automated. It's the direction that things are going, and it creates more efficiency and productivity for all. But it creates some pain in the short term as people have to transition between one job to the next. In the future, there will be a lot of people whose job is, robot support, robot software, supervisor, software supervisor, and all they do is just, restart the machine when it's not working, or take something out of the jam, and that'll be your job. And that's one of the ways that things are going. So, I look at labor and automation, and I invest a lot in everything you can imagine there. The other one is taxes, and what I don't mean by taxes is, what you're paying to the IRS. It's the hidden tax, inflation. So, there's nothing more sad than working harder and having your money be worth less that you make, right? So, I think it's hard for the average person to wrap their head around. But if you go look in your bank account, let's say you have $100,000 in the bank, and you go check 2 years later, and there's still $100,000 in the bank because the bank's paying you, nothing for it. But hey, it's there, it's safe, that's my savings, that's my nest egg. And so it's sort of deceiving because the purchasing power of that $100,000 is no longer $100,000, it's something more like $90,000, right? So you have a guaranteed loss. And this is after you've paid your taxes. So you pay your taxes, then you pay the hidden tax after that. And nobody can really measure inflation, and there's all kinds of people that try and make up numbers. And so, we can debate what the real number is. Is it 2%, like they say is the target? Is it 5%? Is it 10%? Is it 15%? My view is that it's more like 10 or 15%. And you can sort of look at that, I know a lot of people in my family, my aunts and uncles, who are high-fiving because, the S&P 500 is up, 20%, 25%. They think they had an amazing year. But if they were honest, they would say, my stocks went up, but the dollar crashed. Is the reality, so the net return, the effective return is not what people think it is. And so, the other thing I invest in is cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency is, in my view, one of the best ways that you can hedge against inflation, right? So how do you invest in an asset that can't be inflated? So for example, a lot of people think that Bitcoin is a way to make money, right? I bought some Bitcoin, I'm hoping to get rich. And actually that's a big mischaracterization or misrepresentation of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is actually a savings technology. It's not meant to be something that sort of appreciates to infinity. Bitcoin is a savings technology. It's a place you could store your wealth, and because there's only 21 million of these things. It can't be inflated, the supply cannot change, and it's ruled by math. It's a math equation that anybody can go look at and see the monetary policy. You don't have to guess what somebody in some back room is going to decide. And so, in math we trust is sort of the San Francisco motto, more so than anything else. So, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin is a savings technology, and basically it solves this problem that everybody has to one degree or another, which is your money is basically a bowl of ice cream that's melting. And what most people are trying to do is go get some more ice cream and put it into this melting bowl. But I'm more focused about how do I get the ice cream to stop melting first, and then I now have something that's sustainable, right? I don't want a leaky bucket. And so, that's why I invest I invest heavily in cryptocurrencies and in technologies that reduce, labor costs for businesses.
That's why I like hanging around these smart people. So I come out of dinner last night, we're talking, Shaan's like, so what are you gonna do with this Sag Swag business, you and Jordan? I said, well, our plan, you guys know the story and the plan. My buddy that had worked at Payless Cashways, he was the CEO there, and then he was with Nardelli at Home Depot, and Nardelli went to Chrysler. He goes, spins off, creates this business consulting firm, and then jumps on as the CEO of a company called American Identity. they said, I said, what the hell is American Identity? I don't even know what the hell. He said, we sell hats and T-shirts. I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, you're one of the biggest CEOs in the country. He's like, well, I think I can make a play here. He gets on and he sells it to Staples for $8 billion within like 24 months. And so he's like, I'm telling you, man, there's a big play. And I said, who are your biggest accounts? ADM, John Deere, and Cargill. Oh boy, light bulbs go off. I said, hey, I know those folks. Those folks are pretty good friends of mine that run those companies. And he said, yeah. And I told John, I said, we're at this point with the hat business. We're like, you know, we want to scale it to sell it at an exit. You know, I don't know about anything $8 billion. Hell, we'll take $1 billion. We'll take a little less. But the problem is this, and you recognize it in your own businesses. Do I want to get bigger? Do I want to stay where we're at? Profit margin, you know, the margins, things have been good where we are. If we go to the next level, we'd have to go to about 100,000 square foot warehouse space, have it centrally located. ADM want to put in an order, say, if ADM or Cargill want to place an order for $1 million worth of hats, it isn't a cash flow issue. They stroke the check for the $1 million. We have to inventory the hats. It becomes a logistics business. They want 12 hats shipped to Brazil. They want 10 hats shipped to this dealer. They want 20 hats shipped. Hell, I mean, your next thing you're in logistics. And I said, Shaan, I'm like, gosh, I just don't know if I want to bite the bullet. It isn't so much, I don't mind buying the property. I just don't know if I want to deal with all those people on that infrastructure side and manage that headache, or if Jordan yet has the tools or who we'd hire. Sean's like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? Just out, tell him what you told me. I'm like, I don't even know what you're saying.
Yeah, I have an e-commerce business as well, and you know, you can use a third-party logistics firm. Most people know that, but you know, there was this one that we found that had this brilliant little arbitrage where there's some kind of treaty between the U.S. and Mexico. That means where if goods land in the U.S., but they're passing through to Mexico, you don't have to pay customs duties on it. And so some very smart entrepreneur realized that. They built a huge 100,000 square foot, you know, storage and pick, pack, and ship facility right on the border. Like, they're 1 mile away from, I don't know, San Diego or something like that. They're like in Tijuana, and then they drive across. They have a little truck that goes back and forth between the border. And the idea is basically, you know, normally when your goods land in the U.S., you might pay 15% tariff on it. And what these guys are doing is, because they're located in Mexico, it passes through the Long Beach port down to Mexico, and you don't pay any tariffs. And so essentially your fulfillment becomes free.
You said, yeah, Amazon petitioned to.
Yeah, the big companies lobbied to say, hey, look, we're shipping goods all over the place. We can't be paying customs at every border, so just pay it at the final border where it lands. And so what that meant was that, you know, these guys were able to arbitrage. They have cheaper labor in Mexico, cheaper real estate in Mexico, and the customers don't have to pay any tariffs. So essentially you get free fulfillment. I thought it was kind of amazing.
So it could be, he just snapped a finger. He's like, dude, I got your solution. Here it is. I'm like, I don't even know where that came from out of left field, but I think we definitely have to look into it. But no, that's what I'm saying. So I think through the networking and having the younger folks around, we're hearing a lot of different things. So, you know.
And in the tech industry, so I'm 33. In the tech industry, I'm old. Right?
I know.
So I'm saying every day, we got to hang out with some young people. And, you know, I literally, there's a guy, I'll tell you this. There's a guy who used one of the apps that I'd built. He was 13 years old. And he would come home from school every day. He would use our app. And he just loved technology. He was just a young kid. He was in middle school, I think 8th grade at the time. And so a couple years, you know, I think 5-6 years have gone by. He's 19 now, I think. And he messages me the other day. He says, hey, I heard you talking about a charity, charity water. It sounds great. You know, I've had some good success in cryptocurrency. I've set aside 7 figures to donate to, you know, I want to start doing some philanthropy. I was like, he's 19. And, you know, so tech is a very humbling business. You know, I have 2 interns that, you know, have had IPOs now. And it's like, what the hell am I doing up here, you know? And so I think it's always a good idea to surround yourself with people who not just think differently than you, but the hack to that is just find people younger, because they will already be thinking differently. They will already be hanging out with people, and things that are normal for them will seem really strange for you. That's actually part of my investment strategy, is I have a team of people that are all like that. They either live in a different place, or they're, you know, a decade younger than me or more, because they bring the best ideas.
Hey, tough to argue with it, Andy. What do you think? You got any questions?
Yeah, but they wouldn't sound smart enough to ask.
Hey, and you and I are trading cryptos and NFTs. What are we doing? I don't think we got an edge, do we?
Not a little.
You don't, honestly, you don't, I told you this last night, you don't have to be that smart about it, right? You were on Bitcoin pretty early.
Yeah.
And you could make small bets. That's the beauty of technology investing. When I invest, right, Warren Buffett has this thing, he says, you know, the #1 rule of investing is don't lose money. The number 2 rule of investing is don't forget rule number 1, right? That's the Warren Buffett philosophy. He's one of the best investors in the world. You go into tech investing, 9 out of 10 deals, you're going to lose money. And you're going to look like an idiot. You're going to tell people you backed this, flying drone that's supposed to put a camera on your cat or something. And, it's the 1 out of 10 that actually hits that returns 100x or 1,000x. And so it's a different mindset you have to be in where you're constantly being humbled by being wrong. But if we just, cryptocurrency might sound really, really, sort of fancy, but what you did, you heard about it, sounded interesting, you placed a small bet. And over the last decade, last 10 years, the absolute best investment strategy you could have had was buy Bitcoin and shut up. If you just did that, you would have outperformed every hedge fund manager. You would have outperformed, every trader. And then in the last 5 years, it would have been buy Ethereum and shut up.
What is it now?
I personally still think it might be buy Ethereum and shut up. Ethereum has a long way to go, in my opinion. But there are a couple others that I don't know. I'm going to say this word. You may not know it or you may not care about it right now, but I think it will become I think in 3 years you're going to be like, I heard this dude at this farming conference say the word stable coins, and that became an important word in our life. A lot of people criticize Bitcoin because they say, well, yeah, it's going up and I get it, but nobody uses it for transactions. Why would you buy a coffee with Bitcoin if it might go up or down the next day? And that's true. Bitcoin's not good as a what they call a medium of exchange. It's not good for transactions. And so the crypto community invented something called a stable coin. It's basically a coin that's always worth $1. And it's pegged to the dollar. So you can use that whenever you need to make a transaction, and then you could store your wealth in Bitcoin so it doesn't get inflated away. Or you could store your wealth in Ethereum so it doesn't get inflated away. And so I think that there's Bitcoin solved the problem of digital gold. Ethereum solved the problem of basically digital compute. And somebody's going to solve the problem of a digital currency that you use for transactions. And so there's a couple, but they're all speculative bets right now.
Yeah. Jordan, we've been talking. We were excited. I tell you, Jordan was doing stuff with NFTs, and we were trying to get Kennedy to make NFTs and with the cards. But what do we think about land?
Yeah, I mean, people right now with NFTs getting all tripped up and thinking NFT is, they're all saying JPEG of art. Well, NFTs are a lot more than just art. I mean, it's called a non-fungible token is what it means. And you can do that with anything. I mean, I can do it with this desk, that chair. I can do it with this hat. And one idea I think I had, so this is already in the music industry. Anytime someone plays a song on the radio, they get paid. They get a royalty on it. And that's why this NFT has became huge in art. What they've done is, say I'm an artist, or I guess my sister's an artist, and she sells a painting, 20 you guys, her very first painting for $500. She just needed some money. Well, she blows up to be something huge and sells one of her paintings for $50 million. Well, here you come out of the woods, like, hey, I actually have her first painting ever, and you sell it for $100 million. Well, she gets absolutely nothing out of that deal, and you get the $100 million. Where these NFTs are coming in play is these artists are now getting royalties. And it's actually a cool thing because it's a win-win-win across the board for everybody. The artists are not pissed when someone has one of their paintings they sold for nothing because they're getting the royalty. The auction houses are happy, the buyers are happy, and everything like that. My theory is, why can't we start to do this in land? The people that own the land now, it's obviously a really cool play, but for someone like the Ormiston family, it's something really awesome. I mean, they've had that land ever since that land's been in existence in America. And why can't they put an NFT on that land to where anytime there's a sale, say they want to exit farming, they place an NFT on that land, and anytime there's a sale, their family gets a 5% royalty on that sale. So if, say it sells 10 times, within 10 years, they're getting a royalty.
And he's saying because of all the improvements and everything they've done to that, if they tokenize the land or make it an NFT, they would be able to, wouldn't they, Shaan, be able to say?
I'll give you an easier
Yeah, I mean,
example.
I'm just thinking outside the box, but I'm thinking of lots of farms I've watched really turn their farms into really cool things, and they're almost artists, because I say it takes science and art to be a good farmer.
Right.
How could they get rewarded long time? It's something crazy.
Let me give a different example that I think is a little easier to wrap your head around. So how many people were at, like, let's say the first or second version of this event? How many people attended?
150?
150. Okay, great. And like, was anybody here, like, show of hands if you're here at maybe the first or the second event?
Yeah, that's you.
Okay, great. So the way that all events work today, typically, you sell a ticket, I buy the ticket, I come to the event, after the event's over, it's done. But you would probably admit that the people who came early on set the culture, created the traditions, built the relationships that have helped the event grow, right? So those early people who took a bet on flying out or coming out here and helped build the community, they don't really get a lot of value out of it. They don't really get any economic value out of it. So here's what people are doing now. They say, instead of a ticket, which is just kind of a fee, let's create an NFT. Let's create a digital membership, right? So you could do this. You could have said, I'm going to have 1,000 FARMCON tokens. If you come to this first one, it's yours, right? You buy that first of all, and people might have bought that for $1,000, $2,000, and they're basically saying, hey, in the future, anytime they host an event, you need one of these to get in. So I can either use it for myself, or I can sell it to somebody else who wants to go to the event. I can kind of earn rent on my ticket. And so that ticket now becomes an asset that might sell for $5,000, $10,000 on the open market because there's only 1,000 of them. There's a fixed amount, and people, if you believe that when you go to the first one, hey, this community is amazing, this is going to get big over time, you might actually be able to benefit from the growth of the community. You're not going to get super rich off this, but it's a model. The reason this is cool is because now you have a lot of buy-in from all the people who are early on. They all want it to succeed because they all have a vested stake in it succeeding. So that's how you could turn event tickets into NFTs.
So Shaan, in farmland, we got this massive transition coming where the older farmers trying to leave it to their next legacy plays. Jay will tell you, Jay Felton, the attorney right next to you, can you NFT or tokenize land based on the improvements they made, the tiling, they're doing this, they're doing that?
You can make an NFT out of anything. Doesn't mean it's a good idea necessarily, right? There's a project that just came out where people just made an NFT of every Olive Garden. They just took a picture of every Olive Garden in America and they just made it an NFT, and then Olive Garden, after it did really well, Olive Garden sued them, told them to take it down. But it's not necessarily, you can make a token out of anything, it's not necessarily going to have value. That's why there's 1,000 cryptocurrencies. They're not all going to make it. I think that one of the counterintuitive, this is not a great answer for you, but one of the counterintuitive things about crypto is that the more it's pegged to like a real world asset, let's say like land has real value. So in the last 100 years, you've come up with a whole bunch of solutions to how to monetize that, how to make value out of it. Crypto helps with things that previously didn't have a good solution. So like, digital art. There was no way to sell digital art because how can I tell this is a screenshot or the original? It was impossible to sell digital art until this. And so the technology is not going to change everything. I personally wouldn't see I think there's going to be more digital land sold than people tokenizing real physical land, because I think for real physical land, we already have a good business model.
Huh. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Oh, go for it.
No, John, I want to hear you. Go, talk, tell me, what do you know about it?
Well, so I really respect what Shaan is saying, and it's funny, I'm actually doing increasingly work in kind of the tokenization, fractionalization, and otherwise creating NFTs from things. What's interesting, and I think the really important comment to say here, and this kind of echoes a lot of what Shaan was saying, is, right, like, the trick about this is, like, why actually is this useful in crypto world, right? The problem is that there's a lot of consistent problems in these types of markets that are the issue. Really, it comes down to two. The first is pricing. It is incredibly hard to price most assets, right? Things without a liquid market, things that are not just traded on the NASDAQ or, commodities that are very recognizable, it's very, very hard to price it appropriately, right? Like, even considering land, true, you can appraise it, but depending on the time of the day, time of the year, and depending on the supply and demand curve, you can get 20 or 30% lower or 20 or 30% higher depending on timing, right? And so pricing is incredibly opaque, and pricing is incredibly hard. The second part is that the secondary markets themselves are just pretty operationally intensive, right? When you consider about making NFTs for things, right? Like if you have a small company or a small piece of land or something like that, then you have to try to create a legal structure or a legal entity around these things. And then you have to create some set of template documents in order to be able to offer them to the larger audiences, right? And then you have to go through secondary markets. And indeed, when you start talking about this for like companies, That's incredibly new, right? Like the Jobs Act a couple of years ago effectively enabled you to have private secondary markets for different private companies and things like that. And so the reason why this is important to note is that you not only have a pricing problem where the majority of assets in the world, it's just hard to understand what their fair market value is, but you also have a problem where operationally marketing those things, selling those things, and transacting those things is a challenging entity to do. And so that's kind of one of the sale points of crypto, right? Is that you effectively create these systems to make those things very efficient. You make systems to allow the secondary markets to be traded incredibly effortlessly, and you make ways where the pricing can be very transparent, right? You just have a clear ledger, you have a clear website, you have a clear location that shows all these prices and does those things well. And so to Shaan's point on, it kind of works for assets that, have really broken models right now. Yeah, you can kind of think about it where it starts off with the very obvious things, but it's also clear that it just is the long-term solution, right? If you want things that are incredibly automated and you don't want to have to pay, $100,000 for just raising a round of capital for a company and pay millions of dollars for IPOs, then you can choose much more capital efficient ways by offering these through tokens and other offerings like that. And some of this is still kind of, to be decided and to be determined, but that's the promise, right? That's the pitch. The pitch is, why pay 15,000 bankers when you can pay, one to set up this token, this contract, and pass it out? So I think that's kind of what I would say on the general concept of creating NFTs and fractionalizing ownership and kind of creating that. It's really about how do we have fair market pricing? How do we clearly see what the value of things are? And then the second part of that is how do you have secondary markets where people can actually transact it? When you unlock those two things, you unlock the capability to buy and sell a lot of things in this world. And I think that that's a pretty promising thing.
Yeah, I'm into the fractionalized investing and even into a collecting standpoint, Jay Felton will tell you. And I've tried to talk to Carter about this with our portfolios through iSelect, whether it's Rally or Collectible. If you've seen Rally or Collectible, the apps, it's fractionalized investing. You have to be whatever it is, you got to be a qualified investor, just like on Carter's. Click of a button, I can participate and buy the Declaration of Independence. I mean, click of a button, I can participate and buy, whatever. Well, we can do that as well on almost anything. And I told Jordan, that's why I started getting back in and I was buying heavily, and Michelle will tell you, she's thought I've gone nuts. I own Charizards, I own friggin' Raichu, I got Pokemon cards, I've got 52 Mantles to, Jordan rookies to, it doesn't matter what it is. I just believe if you're going to fractionalize invest and people want to just put small amounts of money in, the rarity and the availability of supply that people are going to start to post and put on there, the supply is going to dry up because of all these fractionalized investing. If you start to fractionalize invest a farm, and they want to buy that farm and it gets tokenized, and there's a bunch of kids that want to be involved in a farm that is climate change appropriate and running a cool lineage of cattle, and they want to be part of this farm, I got to believe the value starts to go sky high into that fractionalized space. And I don't think it's very far away before you could get millennials and younger kids to invest into your fractionalized some type of farm. Do you agree, John?
I 100% agree with that. It's funny. So I do a lot of interviewing for colleges. So, I'll go and interview kids to see if they should get into schools, things like that. And I met this guy a bit ago who would trade shoes. And to be clear about this, what he would do is with Nike and I guess Jordans, the Airs, and everything, I don't know anything about this, but he showed me his closet and it was just full of pairs of shoes that he bought. He just bought every shoe when it came out. And he would go on eBay a couple of months later. He said he'd hold a shoe for about 3 months, then go on eBay and sell it 3 months later. And almost every time he'd make a ton of money. And exactly like what you say, it's these, it's really hilarious how many alternative assets are just absolute cash cows, because the logistics and operation, kind of to what we were talking about earlier, the logistics and operation of these things are insane. Rally that you mentioned is actually a really good case of this, right? Rally has massive warehouses where they actually hold the assets. So they custody the assets themselves, and then they sell you a fractionalized chunk of it. Well, by golly, that breaks this idea of logistics and operations and all the unsexy crap from the actual effort of thinking about things and making intelligent transactions and making intelligent trades and positions. And so I totally agree with you. And I think when you talk about the millennials too, you're also talking about a massive community presence. You're talking about a massive generation that grew up with this, World of Warcrafts and online economies and digital economies, things like that. These are groups of people that natively think and natively talk about digital things. So it logically makes sense that you start building virality there, and you're going to take off to the moon.
I thought that you could build an app. You guys will get a kick out of it. If I had like a redneck rally app and it was just for our type of stuff, we could buy the, buy the Dodge Charger on the Dukes of Hazzard, buy some really cool guns from the Civil War day. And, and you fractionalize and let people fractionalize, invest in some of the coolest items that we like in rural America. And it's like, I think, it'd probably blow up to some degree. So it'd be fun. But I think you could do that with farms and farming. Jay, you seen the same thing, Felton?
Yeah, I mean, I think the opportunity we have here, it's just great to hear all this, and it's great to be here today. I'm a lawyer, more importantly, I'm a Van Trump lawyer, but I'm also a fifth-generation farmer, and like a lot of you, when I'm looking at investing, I have that one farm that's on the top of my list for investing. But we need to do the barbell strategy that we're all trying to do with the assets that are more secure and then the assets that are more risk-based. Jonathan just talked about that, and when we think about that risk-based, in that area in particular, the clients I talk to, you just need to be really nimble. You need to understand that risk is a risk. What Shaan just said, 9 out of 10 might not work. I think then you have to keep an open mind. So when you fractionalize something, I think that's common. It's easier to fractionalize something that is static, that doesn't move. I can fractionalize the Mona Lisa. When that comes on the market, that thing will be worth a lot. Fractionalize, the 52 mantle or whatever. But when you move on to trying to fractionalize something that's fluid, that's evolving, that's changing, that's generating losses and gains, that's going to be a little bit more of a challenge, but I think we're going to get there. It's just going to be a matter of having the legal system and the regulatory system catch up with it. But it's where we are, and Jonathan, again, hit the nail right on the head. The generation that's coming, when we look at people that are 25 years old, they were 10 when Roblox came out. And the metaverse, people, I know you will probably roll your eyes at me with this, but I work with people all over the United States, and the metaverse isn't going to be here. The metaverse is here, and it's not a metaverse, it's a multi-metaverse. And the generation that we're talking about has lived in it and doesn't have any concerns about it. They don't mind holding things digitally. And it's going to be a great opportunity. You can play it by having stocks, and Kevin can give you a list of those, or you can play it by looking for opportunities and participating in it yourself. If you don't participate in the metaverse, one of the metaverses, if you have any kids at home under the age of 18, they probably are participating in it or will participate in it. So that's an area to really look at.
Yeah, I was talking to Jorgensen's in the cattle side. I'm like, why don't you tokenize their NFT? They got some crazy lines of bulls, and I'm like, fractionalize invest it where you can own tokens in the bulls of some sort, and we're participating in the lease programs on the bull side. And I mean, I think there could be plays, and I think there could be lots of plays on the livestock side in that and other things. So, I mean, it's crazy to me, the opportunities that are coming, so.
I mean, there's even huge plays buying land in the metaverse. I mean,
Yeah.
I just saw like Snoop Dogg created some metaverse and they just sold some piece of land for $1 million. I mean, why can't we get in this metaverse and start farming in the metaverse and producing food for everybody in this metaverse? I mean,
And that might sound silly to people, like why would I buy virtual land? But, if I had said you can buy land in any place for the last 3 years, if I said I will give you, 10% of the land in any place, some people might pick New York, some people might pick, Shanghai. Fortnite would be the answer, right? So Fortnite was a digital place. It's a map that had a specific set of locations, and then it had hundreds of millions of people spending, hours and hours and hours hanging out there. Fortnite had the most valuable land and sort of advertising real estate of anybody in the last few years. Netflix came out and said Fortnite is our biggest competition because that's where the attention was. And so if you just look at where does the attention go, that becomes the sort of valuable real estate for you. So that's kind of just a way to say, well, why the heck would anybody buy digital land?
My cousin told me at Thanksgiving, his kid had the biggest meltdown of his life. I think they were on Roblox playing with had his whole farm, and somebody stole his pigs and his cows, or he made a bad trade, and the neighbor kid, that he was going to have to go down and have a little talk with the neighbor kid's dad because the dad's kid stole the guy's cows. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Virtual cows and pigs. He said, shut the hell up, you'll be fine. And he's like, no, Dad, I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars buying and trading these virtual cows on. I'm like, what are you guys even talking? I don't even know, but
Yeah.
we're getting out deep into the woods on this. Let's reel it in, talk some reality. Walter, what are you seeing? What are you thinking, buddy? For current, to give people some things to walk away with that are going to impact them and affect them in the next year and a half.
I'll go back to my theme from yesterday and maybe give people a market perspective as well. Most of you have an access to look at futures markets. You most likely have wheat. You most likely have corn, soybeans. You may have cattle. You may have hogs. Just in a show of hands, as I did yesterday, how many of you who have those quote systems have soybean oil on your quote system? Okay, so a handful. I would highly recommend everybody have soybean oil futures and canola futures, if you can get those, if your service provides those as well, to observe. Because that's going to be the greatest driver in prices in the coming years. Just very quickly, we're at a period right now in the United States, we produce 25 billion pounds of soybean oil every year. To biodiesel, 8 billion pounds goes to biodiesel. And then we export about 2 billion pounds. So as this development of renewable diesel is occurring, there's a stealing period going on right now, but you can't see it. And it's keeping a lid on prices. So there's a profound shortage of the feedstock for the renewable diesel industry, but you're not feeling it today. Because the renewable diesel is stealing soybean oil from exports, so US exports are collapsing, so we've got supply from the renewable diesel perspective. And for many of you who may be partners or investors in a biodiesel plant, you also know the problems you're having there. So of the 8 billion pounds that goes into biodiesel, the renewable diesel industry is probably going to take 6 or 7 of that. And that's what's going on today. So we're hanging around 58 cents. We got as high in the 60s, and then we've had in last June, and then we've had this quiet period with the markets just drifting lower. And during this drifting lower period, there's been the ability of the renewable diesel industry to take feedstock. And what's going to happen here in the latter part of this year and the first part of 2023 is an enormous uptick in consumption from the renewable diesel industry as the refining capacity comes online. And that's going to get expressed in the price of soybean oil. And the price of soybean oil is going to do something very special then. And that's going to, 18% of a soybean is its oil. So soybeans are going to benefit. And I hear the caution and the views. The reality is we have an enormous demand bull market that's unfolding right now. And I can't get bearish on the soy complex, for instance, or soybeans themselves, when the US soy processor is making $3.50 a bushel on soybeans today. That's not a recipe for prices to go lower. The function of the market is not to take margins from $3.50 a bushel to $5 a bushel. Put soybean oil on your monitor, keep an eye on it, observe it. Kevin often notes the price of palm oil and other oils. in his commentary. But that, over the next 2 to 3 years, is going to be the dynamic driver in the pricing of row crops and your acreage decisions.
Perfect. I know some folks have flights, transportation. We're getting close. You guys think of your closing comments. Everybody's going to get to close, and take a few minutes and think. I'll just say we'll start with Carter, and then go to John, and then we'll go down the line with Greg. And well, I appreciate all of you guys. Number one, everyone that's been on the panel, the people who have come up and taken their time to share their thoughts. That's what makes it. That is really what makes it. Not a lot of people up here advertising and promoting, a lot of trying to tell the truth, as Grant would say, tell the truth. And I think that's what we've tried to do. I appreciate all the folks that partner with us, Sontech, Meristem, iSelect, ADM. ADM had to cancel their whole table last minute, corporate wise. Lathrop, Organics, CGB. CGB's always been great with us. Crop Risk Services, Compeer, sent a ton of people. We're super appreciative. Everyone had to jump through a lot of hurdles to get here this year. Benson Hill has been great. Sponsored Conestoga, StoneX, and Ag Council. I appreciate it. Should have done it at the beginning of the conference. I didn't. I should have told everyone thanks. My wife, my family. It's been a good show. So I don't know, what we could do different. I'm always open to suggestions, open to opinions. You guys are free to email me. A lot of you got my cell phone. Tell me what you'd have liked to see. I think some of you wanted to be a lot cooler in here. We tried. Just kidding. We've told them 50 times. I don't know. It was hot the first day, then it got cold, so I apologize. But the hotel I thought's been really good. We're supposed to wear our mask a little bit more. We got some emails on that. I apologize for those that are mad that we didn't have the mask on all the time where we're supposed to. Tricky environment. I don't know the answers. I certainly don't. But I appreciate everyone taking their time and got families, and everyone's trying to stay healthy and not get sick. And like I said, unbelievable turnout, and I owe it. You got, like Shaan said, you guys are the ones that make the show. I mean, the audience and the crowd, and as Walter said, people come for the networking and to meet the people, and we got good people in the room, and I'm glad I can provide that with the new faces and young people. And I know Andy was excited to hear from John and Shaan. He's like, I got to hear this. I got to hear this stuff. And I think that's awesome that we can share those things. Wish we could have more time with everyone. It's always an issue every year, but I do appreciate it. Our family appreciates it. My daughter in college appreciates it. She's going to be hopefully on her own here the next time around. So yeah, I think, Jordan, we appreciate their business and everything everyone does for us. And thanks for forwarding the report around, getting other people on and make the network bigger. And hopefully I can give back by us utilizing the network that we're building and help you guys build your businesses. And in turn, it comes back to us and circles back. So it's definitely a win-win. And anything we can do to help you guys. We've had some kids write us business plans and send us things, and we try to refer them on to people that we think can help them. And we'll do the same for anybody in the audience. So if you need any help from us, email Jordan, myself, my wife. We'll at least try to hook you up with whoever. I know some of you were talking about a crush facility. Well, hit me up. I'll forward it over to Walter. You guys can chat and talk. Or if you need to know anything about whatever, we'll share openly. So kick it off, Carter. Take us home.
Yeah, I miss being there. I appreciate being at this event specifically because of the networking, and I've made hundreds of friends at your event, and with COVID, I declare officially, COVID's over. You've changed it. Getting connected and back together has really sort of got my juices going again. I apologize I couldn't be there, but I will be the next time. I think iSelect has about $400 million of investable opportunities over the next 18 months that are going to be the next set of Benson Hills for ag tech. There's easily 10, 20, $30 billion of opportunity of investment in the venture side alone on ag tech over the next 24 months. So if anybody's interested in investing, we should get together. And then, the other thing I've been thinking about is the and has been reinforced is the younger generation who's on the farm trying to figure out how to apply technology is really an interesting group of people. And we've been talking a lot. Andy's been talking about next gen type of events. And I think it's time, and if anybody wants to work with me on this, to bring together the young people who are really going to be driving business in agriculture and let them see some of the deals we're seeing so that they can understand new technology and figure out how to apply it, and then get ideas from them about the kinds of technologies that we should be investing in. We get people asking about internships and all that kind of stuff all the time. And I'm sort of more interested in having 100, 200 younger people who are on the farm trying to figure out what to do, working in our network in some particular way, in a collaborative way, to really change the equation of farming. So if anybody's got any ideas on that, please reach out to Kevin or me. Kevin, maybe we need to team up on this a little bit and figure it out. But I'm really sort of excited about that thought.
Perfect, buddy.
And we're behind, so it's time. Andy's been yelling at me about this for a long time, and it's time.
You're right, it is.
Sounds good, Carter. Yeah, let's work on that. We'll circle the wagons this week and see what we can do. And I'll probably see you at your event coming up, and we'll the one down in Florida. Yeah. John, what do you got?
So I first want to say genuinely thank you guys. I appreciate this a lot. I got connected. Yeah, as I mentioned, I grew up in Missouri, and my folks own a pretty big farm down in Texas, and I grew up in a small town. Maybe I'll share an interesting fact, which I didn't know and I recently learned. So the current population of the world is like 7 billion approximately. However, the population growth is actually at its lowest point that it's been since like 10,000 BC. Like, I kid you not. It's around 0.1% growth right now. And it's actually like slowing dramatically. Like, pretty much we're going to hit 10 billion in population, pretty much capped there. Now, why am I mentioning that? Because I think right now is a pretty pivotal moment. Like, I think it's a pretty pivotal moment economically. I think it's a pretty pivotal moment technologically, and I think it's a pretty pivotal moment for kind of us as humans. I believe that like crypto like really does kind of solve two of the hardest problems in society. I believe it helps solve data privacy, right? The only way that you're going to end up not having to give your data to massive private organizations that warehouse it in massive silos is if you're putting it in distributed ledgers that's encrypted and only you hold the key to it, right? So data privacy is solved in pretty amazing ways. The second problem is automation, right? It's pretty insane the number of knowledge workers who go to school, go to college, or even the people that are going about their days and doing things that can be entirely automated, right? That's sad for everyone involved. And so the reason I say this is that I think so many areas still haven't actually been touched. And I think when you talk about the Midwest, when you talk about farming, when you talk about like a lot of innovation coming out of those areas, I think it's pretty crazy that parts of the ecosystem really just haven't evolved as quickly and as effortlessly as other parts, right? I work here in like New York, and like, yeah, fine, trading and finance is like fun, but like, you're not really literally putting more food on people's table. And I think the cool part is that some of this technology is going to finally start to get to those points. So anyways, I think it's kind of what I would end with. If anyone ever wants to talk about crypto in more detail, work in different ways, Shaan, I would really love to connect, by the way. I was really looking forward to meeting you in person. My email is john@floating.group. Also, more than happy. You can also reach me at my last name, john@gmail.com. Yeah, by golly, really, really wonderful meeting everyone. I really enjoyed the chance to kind of get to talk and learn about the panel. Thank you. 18% of a soybean is its oil. I didn't know that. I will forever remember that. But thanks so much, guys, and have a good rest of the afternoon.
Thanks, John. Go ahead, Dowd. You got it.
Kevin, right quick, thanks for having me. I want to come back to the topic of inflation. And I agree with everything that's said. I don't understand what's going on in the U.S. housing market. It seems just completely overheated to me. But with regard to food prices, I'm bullish global ag trade in an environment where you have higher fertilizer prices, in an environment where you have higher oil prices. I don't see anything that brings back food prices. I'm still on the inflationary side of the equation on food prices. And not only, my prediction is for 2023 at this conference, we're going to be talking about energy prices, oil prices. We're going to be talking about fertilizer prices. And let's throw out a number. We're going to be talking about an operating note with 150 to 200 basis point increase in interest rate as well.
You're bullish. You're bullish. Ike?
Okay. I share a lot of the, intermediate to long-term optimism, but my job, my responsibility is to make sure that you folks balance all of that with the need to manage the short-term exposure and risks. You never know when the next black swan's out there. Be careful. Be safe. I'll leave it at that. Andrew?
First of all, Walter, just to clarify one thing, I agree with you emphatically about your position and your bias on bean oil. I do think that their contribution to crush is where I'm referring more is going to go up. That does not negate my negative opinion on soybeans, and my negative opinion on soybeans is not 2 to 3 years from now, but over the next 12 months. So I maintain that negative bias. I may maintain my negative bias on spreads in soybeans. I do feel that the corn market has the best fundamental potential for upside potential in this crop year, but I am cautious about the fund length and the black swan type activity that could chase them out, whether that's interest rates rising, which is a given in my opinion, or as Kevin points out, China getting goofy. So other than that, I guess the only other thing outside of the ag world I would comment on is I think there's a good chance, because this administration more than anything needs a win, and they haven't had very many, if any, so far going forward. So I think that you have bipartisan support on both sides of the pot issue, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised to see that get legalized. And pots have languished for quite a while, all the pot stocks, and I guess if I'm taking any flyers, that's one that I kind of think is worthy of looking at. And I'll turn it over to Walter.
We touched on, but we could have spent an entire day of the 2-day conference on carbon and the role of agriculture in sequestering carbon. There's a very good friend of mine who ran Bunge Limited's carbon fund. He was the most successful carbon manager during the go-go years of carbon that went quiet and now are coming back. He tells me that the consensus in United Nations and similar type organizations is that agriculture is the biggest sinkhole for carbon in the world. And so I think by this time next year, Kevin, we probably should have at least a half a day on carbon and understanding your role that you're going to be asked or paid to do, paid for sure, because there will be a carbon price and you'll be mitigating carbon, so you'll be paid to do it. And then processes around measuring how you're doing that, because what the carbon industry and carbon credits and the ecology of carbon trading needs is certainty. And the biggest problem with Kyoto and the reason Kyoto collapsed was there wasn't certainty around the carbon sequestration processes. Last thing I'll say, and there were a couple of questions to me on this. If the Summit carbon pipeline is coming through your area, please support it as a corn farmer. It's extremely important for your ethanol plant that carbon pipeline gets built, and it's incredibly important for the sustainability of, I said ethanol plant, and I should have, that corn dry mill that's evolving and is going to produce wonderful things. But it needs your support, and if you're attending meetings and you're hearing the opposition from your fellow farmers who are corn farmers to the pipelines coming through your area, please sit down with them and say, hey, this is our dry mill here in this region is going to be here. It is a legacy industrial plant to hand to your children and your grandchildren, and it really needs that carbon sequestration pipeline. So I would urge you to support that, and Kevin, I think next year we do, I think, have put together some really good guys on carbon coming in.
For sure. Shaan?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name, again, is Shaan. Learned a lot here. First thing I learned when I got off the plane was that Kansas City is not in Kansas, or I was not in Kansas, but there is a Kansas City in Kansas also. Still working that one out. If if anybody wants to explain that to me later, I'll be available. Yeah, no investment advice, more just be curious about things. I think that's the kind of the formula that works. Get curious first. You'll find good ideas later. If anybody does have that curiosity, would love to kind of connect after this. I basically invest in a bunch of weird stuff, and I like to explain how it all works, and I think people find that to be interesting and ultimately lucrative. My email is hard to spell because my name is weird, but I'll give you my phone number. So if anybody wants to text this phone number, I'll email you after that. So here we go. 434-505-4769. It's not my actual phone number, but it's a phone number that I'll get back to you on. 434-505-4769. All right, thank you. I feel like I left a voicemail.
Yeah, again, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you here today. I've learned a lot. I got to be a lawyer for a second, Kevin. I'm sorry. I'm gonna really hope in 2023 that we're not talking about how the regulatory environment has impacted and potentially taken away some of the tools and markets that we have in the federal level, but especially at the state level. And that's the type of thing that we at Lathrop are tracking for our clients, trying to stay ahead of the curve. And like I said, I hope we're not talking about that in 23, but it's something that we are tracking carefully. I just love seeing all the different opinions and different generations up here, and it reminds me of the advice my grandpa gave me, and which is kind of what you said, but it's always be diversified, be nimble, and always be curious. And I think that's wonderful. So thank you very much.
I guess I'm wrapping this thing up. First and foremost, appreciate everyone coming out and support my family. Anything I've done wouldn't be possible without you guys, and been blessed with crazy opportunities. So have my sister. So thanks a lot. But I just want to lay some things out. We've talked about a lot over this whole conference, whether it's the NFTs, which has been crazy, fractional investing, cash rent, sky, biologicals, carbon. Maybe a lot of this stuff's over a lot of your guys' heads. Many of you have been to conferences in the past. Maybe this is the first conference some of you have been to. But just to play it back, I mean, we just got to go home and remember how this plays out and how this is going to disrupt the space. I mean, a long time ago, 8 years ago, we were talking about cryptocurrency. That was kind of the first form of blockchain. Look at what cryptocurrency has done. Or not cryptocurrency, look at what blockchain's done in the cattle industry. Look at how blockchain's gonna potentially affect the crop industry. I mean, I know it's coming, and it's gonna be huge, and that's something you guys can all implement. We talked about Tesla a long time ago, and it's not just the investments itself making the money on the cryptocurrency, making the money on the Tesla investment, but also look at what solar and wind energy has done to the ag industry. Look at what electric cars have done to the ethanol space. I think a lot of these things are important to think about and how they're going to disrupt our industry. But thanks again, and appreciate everyone coming out.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm probably wrap up. Like I said, I think, hearing a lot of people be bullish corn, I don't know, I'm hesitant. I'm usually at this conference, and they're all bearish, and I'm bullish, and this always is a weird deal. And I don't know. I'm not super bullish right up here. I'm hesitant. I don't know. I'm just not super bullish. I'm bullish housing. I'm bullish land. I'm probably bullish Bitcoin. I'm bullish Coinbase. I'll probably buy more. I'll probably buy on the break to some degree, just to have some more exposure longer term. There'll probably be some rocky roads to buy on some of those types of plays, I think, along the lines. Like I said, in the housing, I think there's no supply. I mean, there's just simply no supply. Too many people have sunk too much money now into remodels, rehabs, people are kind of digging in a little bit. There's just not the front end home building that we would need to see or necessitate based on the demand of the demographics that's going to come into play. So we're bullish. I've been bullish housing for the last 4 to 5 years. I told Jordan I was mad, kicking myself that I didn't load up more when I had the opportunity. We sold off some commercial places in the last year or two, but I think there's big times ahead, and I am super bullish. Like I said, I'm bullish land from an infrastructure standpoint. I think we reconvene 2-3 years from now. I think we can be higher, just on a different type of play, a different way it plays out. So, you know, I appreciate everyone coming. If you guys need anything from me, you know my numbers, how to get a hold of me, email me, KVT at Farm Direction, Jordan's Jordan at Farm Direction. Pretty simple and easy. You guys can get us, a hold of us anytime. Safe travels. Appreciate everyone. Thank you again for coming. Have a great New Year.
Time to get up, buddy. It's game time. It's wagon wheel time. 5 minutes of show.